My name is Nfally Fadera. I am a communication practitioner currently working for the Gambia OIC Secretariat as the head of communication and branding. I come from a media background, naturally, radio particularly. I started my radio career, I think, about 13, 14 years ago, 2010. I used to do news in Mandinka, started off at Taranga FM radio, worked there for about 2, 3 years. Then the radio got shut down by the previous government, the previous Jammeh regime. Apparently for the show becoming too popular and radio also going into uncharted territories, because this was at a time when divergent views were not popular. So Jammeh shut down a radio station, and then I moved from Taranga FM. I went to Star FM. I worked at Star FM for about 2, 3 years, and then I decided to go into freelance broadcasting. I think it is safe to say I am one of the first Gambian podcasters online. I opened my podcast online on SoundCloud, and then I was doing my news there because I thought there was a huge audience in the diaspora. This was at a time when a lot of Gambians were moving from home to Europe largely, and I thought there will be huge interest in doing news in the local language, targeting the diaspora, the European audience. And then this was coming on SoundCloud up to a certain point. Then I also started doing it on Facebook Live video. But still on my career trajectory I also work for the University of the Gambia. I worked for the UTG for about 4 years as the Vice Chancellor's personal assistant. I serve Professor Ka, I serve Prof. Khalil, I serve Jenu Mane, and I think Dr. Ja or something like that. I think he's now a professor or something. And then around 2016, I got a scholarship to study in the UK, courtesy of the UK government, the Chevening Scholarship. And when I came back from studies, then I worked for the Office of the President as Senior Communication Officer before being seconded to the OIC, where I am currently serving. So this is who I am in terms of my professional background and my educational journey. I am a Nyominka from Jokadu. I was born and raised in Welingara. That's where I have been until the time that I went for studies and came back. So pretty much this is who I am, really. I don't know if I've left anything out, but largely this is my journey, my humble journey. Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Fadera. Mr. Fadera, you highlighted your position at OIC, and if you can sort of share with our viewers what is your responsibility, and also the reporting structure, how OIC Secretariat communicate with the Office of the President in setting up leading to this conference.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Like I said, my current role, my official title is Head of Brand and Communication. So what I do here is provide leadership in all areas of branding, communication, media relations, our public affairs, and everything else in between. And I also, in my capacity as the Head of Brand and Communication, I also serve as the spokesperson for the organization. But in relation to the summit, my role kind of tilted a bit to include all other matters that were connected to conferencing. Some in the area of logistics, some also in the area of generally making sure that what we need is in place, and also kind of coordinating between the different committees that we have and the secretariat. And in terms of the office, the Gambia OIC Secretariat is set up by an Act of Parliament. We are under the Office of the President. We are governed by a board. The chairperson of the board is the President of the Republic, and other board members are cabinet ministers that have relevant stake in the OIC summit planning and production, such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Works, you know, etc., etc. I think principally about 8 ministers or so form as part of the original board members of the OIC. But in the end, as we move towards the summit, the scope expanded to include other ministries and other senior officials that are relevant to what we are doing. So, in terms of our work, this is who the OIC is. In terms of our structure, but in terms of our mandate is divided principally into 3 fundamental areas. The first one is resource mobilization, and the second one is to coordinate and oversee the implementation of infrastructure projects to bridge the infrastructure deficit of the country in preparation for the summit. And the third mandate is to oversee the events planning of the summit itself. This is the softer component of our work, where we have to work with the different committees that we have to make sure whatever we need in terms of logistics, the administrative requirements, everything is in place. So basically, this is who we are. And if you look at the nature of our work, this is the format it took. In the beginning, when we were set up, our work was largely along the lines of resource mobilization and fundraising, going around the world, talking to friendly countries, reaching out to partner organizations, talking to them, you know, having them believe in our vision and our projects. We mobilized those funds, and thankfully, we ended up making more than $350 million US for all the projects that, all the strategic projects that we identified for ourselves. And then we went into the infrastructure implementation. This is as it relates to the roadworks, the construction of the VVIP lounge at the airport, the water and electricity component for NAWIC, you know, the construction of the conference center, etc. And then the summit planning bit, which is which has to do with the events planning. So principally, this is what the OIC is about. And in addition to the board, we have a secretariat, and the secretariat is headed by a chief executive officer, assisted by a deputy chief executive officer, and a team of managers, the senior management team. Then we have the rest of the staff. So all in all, we are about, I think, 16, 17. We have a very lean structure, but a very effective team nonetheless.
All right, Mr. Farley, thank you. The audience, they wanted to know, and you know, in particular, you mentioned about studying in UK, but what was your specialty as far as your academic qualification?
I studied communication in the UK. Precisely, I went to the University of Westminster, and the name of my course was Communication Policy. That's what I did. And for my thesis, I looked at the role of social media in political mobilization, focusing on the 2016 elections, how political parties and politicians use social media to rally support, but also to mobilize the public. So yeah, basically that's it as far as my course was concerned. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Paramos.
Mr. Fadera, again, welcome to the 40 People by the People. The OIC.
Yes.
The OIC has become what I would call the lexicon within the Gambian community. For the past several years, we've always been talking about OIC. And everyone, they all have their own opinion about the OIC. Now we are looking at post-OIC. How would you define success?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Mr. Jeng. I kind of struggle to hear you. Yes, the line was not very clear from my end. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but if I understand your question well, you said in relation to post-OIC summit, how does success look like to us? Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yes.
Can people hear me though?
Yes.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, we can. You are in and out. I think, you know, probably you need to kind of be close to the computer or something. Yes. But yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to answer your question, I think it's a very important question to begin with. To answer your question, what success looks like to us is Gambia carrying out its mandate and its obligation and its obligations as far as being the host country for the summit. What I usually tell people, in order to measure success, you must have key performance indicators. You must have yardsticks. You must have expectations. And going into the summit planning, our goal or our responsibility as a host country has largely to do with making sure the needed logistical, administrative, protocol arrangements that are needed for a successful event are in place. And if we look back on what we have done, we look back on our performance with great satisfaction. When you look at these key areas that I have highlighted, we made sure that the guests came and they had a very befitting and a very nice reception and time here in the Gambia. If you look at the things that we were obliged to do as host country, is to make sure we take care of the accommodation for the guests that we were expecting, is to make sure the airport reception is as smooth as possible, is to make sure the guests are transported from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the conference center and back to their residences, is to make sure that the guests are well fed, is to make sure we provide a conference facility that will be there to facilitate the work of the conference goers. And if you look at all these areas, alhamdulillah, we did a great job. I think we've in fact exceeded the expectations of the organizers. We had all the areas taken care of, all these important factors that I mentioned. So for us, as far as we are concerned as a secretariat, as far as we are concerned as an organizing committee, as a government, it was indeed a huge success. And this was the sentiment, the same sentiment expressed by the organizers and the guests that we anticipate that we had here in the country. So in every respect, alhamdulillah, definitely there are areas of improvement and things that we can learn from. But nonetheless, generally, we are very much happy with the way things went, much to the commendation of everybody that was involved.
Yeah, Mr. Fadera, in your response to Sarian, you talked about the mobilization of $350 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money. To an average Gambian,
mm-hmm.
they're like, I have a government that went out there and mobilized $350 million for an
mm-hmm.
event. And the average Gambian in Japan or in Kayaf would say, what's in it for me? What do I have
mm-hmm.
to show for it? What would you tell them? Is it really worth it to spend $350 million to an average Gambian, 80% poverty all over the place?
Yeah, that's the, yes, that's a very important question. I think $350 million, if you ask me, is money well spent, because this $350 million went into projects that would improve and impact significantly lives and livelihoods in this country beyond the hosting of the summit. So what I usually tell people is that if you look at the nature of all these projects that we've been working on, they are such that they are legacy projects. The benefit and the impact of these projects will transcend the hosting of the summit. The summit, give and take, was less than 10 days in terms of all the preparations, the arrivals, the meetings, etc., up to the point of departure. It was not more than 10 days. But going into the drawing board, putting these projects together, our focus was that these projects will be meaningless, or this coming of the summit will be meaningless if it is not linked to the welfare and the well-being of the people of this country. And if you look at these projects that we are talking about, they have started impacting and benefiting Gambians in significant ways. Let's take, for example, the Battle Harden Highway. I don't know when was the last time you came here, but the Battle Harden Highway is one of the single biggest important projects that we have in our lifetime in this country. The road has been expanded from a single carriage double lane highway to a 6-lane highway. Now, moving from point A to point B in the greater Banjul area, especially those that live around Brusubi, Senegambia, Fajara N, is very, very quick and fast. I moved from where I lived in Brusubi to my office here to be able to have this interview in less than 10 minutes. So you can see that, we are feeling the impact already. That is number one. Number two, look at the conference center, the Sadara Karabajora International Conference Center. Right now, it is moving to position the Gambia as one of the leading conference destinations in the sub-region. Most international organizations, be it the African Union, be it the UN, they are now turning to Gambia for their annual meetings. And, we had the Africa Central Bank governors annual meetings also held here. We had the first ever Africa Muslim World League Ulama conference in Africa held in the Gambia. So you can see that, the projects are beginning to pay dividend. Our office is also managing the Sadora Karabajawara International Conference Center. And just last year, what we made in terms of revenue is more than $100 million. So you can see that it is going to be better. It is going to continue to impact lives and livelihood. And also, as part of the projects that we have, as part of this 350 million, we've managed to raise up to $32 million for NAWIC to invest into the energy generation and distribution capacity of the company. So, and then you look at the other aspect of the work that we are going to do, the impact of the VVIP Lounge project as well. So all of these things are strategic projects that were designed to benefit Gambians long after the summit is gone. None of these projects are summit-centric. They are all designed to make sure that their impact is here for the long term in a way that it will benefit Gambians long after the summit is gone. And we are beginning to see these things impact in real life. So what I usually tell people is that the hosting of the summit itself is not the end. It's just the beginning. It's not an end in and of itself. It's just the beginning of what is possible. That is why I tell people, if you want to look at the impact of the OIC and the benefit attached to it, just by looking at the summit itself, you are going to miss the point. That's going to be quite limiting and myopic, in the sense that the benefit there would be here long after the summit is gone. We are talking about a minimum lifespan of 25 to 30 years for the Battle Hardened Highway project. And if you look at other projects also, they will be here to benefit this country. That is number one in the area of the infrastructure benefit of the summit coming to the country. Now, let's look at the geopolitical significance of the summit coming to Gambia, what it will do for the country. Gambia is a small country, and small countries, usually, they have to work twice harder to be able to make their mark on the international stage. But here we are as a country, small as we may be, we have a unique opportunity to become a significant player in terms of the geopolitics and world politics. In fact, by virtue of us hosting the summit, Gambia had the world's attention, literally. We were in the news all over the world, all around the cable news. We were on Al Jazeera and other media houses. That in and of itself, it's good opportunity for the Gambia to sign and showcase itself. I also like to tell people all the 2,500 to 3,000 delegates that came and attended the summit, each one of those people would go back with their own unique stories about the Gambia, their experiences that they had here. And I'm sure all the guests had a good time here, because that is what they told us in our private conversations with them. In fact, most of them confessed that had they known what they had seen, they were even going to increase maybe perhaps their level of representation to the country. So you can see that all these people will end up becoming ambassadors for the country, which is also another good opportunity. Gambia will also host the OIC for the next 3 years. That will also give us a unique opportunity to strengthen our position on the world stage globally, because whatever happens in the Muslim Ummah, in the Islamic world, in the OIC, the whole world and the organization will look to Gambia for leadership. Gambia would also have the opportunity to influence a lot of decision making as far as the OIC is concerned. And what this means in real time is that most OIC meetings, whether it is the Council of Foreign Ministers meetings, whether it is OIC exhibitions, whether it is OIC extraordinary summits, etc., all these things, Gambia will have a sort of a force refusal kind of, to be able to, attract the Ummah, and also will be in the driving force, making sure that, whatever agenda the Ummah is part of, the Gambia's reputation, interest, and the interest of the African bloc of the organization is protected. So it's huge in many respects. And I think we can also quantify it in monetary terms, the impact that the coming of the summit will have for us now and in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fadera. Sarian.
So, Mr. Fadera, thank you very much. And I will continue on that line of questioning. As Musa said, I think the key areas that you highlighted is more in the urban area. So now, if we are talking about, priority, what were the key priority deliverables for the OIC summit?
No, in terms of I think the benefits that I highlighted are benefits that will benefit all and sundry, regardless of where you are in the country. The value proposition that the Gambia will have as by virtue of our chairmanship and our leadership of the OIC would benefit all of us, more importantly. But even if you look at these infrastructure projects, to be honest, they are largely based around the Greater Banjul area. But then I think the ripple effects would impact everybody, whether you are in the Greater Banjul area or not. For example, what we have been able to do, or what we have been able to do for NAWEC, raising $32 million for them, or the revenue that we would continue to generate by virtue of our position as a conference destination. All of these things will be plowed back into Gambians, regardless of where they live, and giving NAWEC resources to be able to improve their energy generation and distribution capacity would also impact everybody. So in my view, whether or not you are in the Greater Banjul area, it just happened that Greater Banjul area happened to be the summit impact zone. And we needed to make sure that the summit impact zone is in a situation, it's in a situation where the summit can come and get facilitated to be able to do their summit as smoothly as possible. But in my view, the impact of the summit would impact and benefit all of us, whether you are here in the Greater Banjul area or elsewhere in the country.
All right, thank you. So in terms of the economic impact, so say, people with small business, vendors, women-owned businesses, how do you guys go about in terms of, because there were a lot of items that needs to be set up for the event to be successful. How do you go about selecting, if per se, Gambian-owned businesses? How many would you say, even on a high level, benefited from such a summit?
Yeah. No, in fact, Mr. Marong, I think that's a very good question because I almost forgot about the direct benefits that Gambian companies had as part of our preparations. Maybe I should take a step back before even coming to the summit preparation itself and how it contributed to our local economy more directly. Let's look at the infrastructure projects that we even roll out in preparation for this summit. Most of these projects, in fact, all of them, we require Gambian partnership. We require local content, even contracts where we knew Gambian companies did not have the capacity to carry out. And by virtue of that, we were forced to recruit international companies to carry out, for example, the widening of the Batil Hardin Highway, given to the 50-kilometer project and the NAWEC project. These are all projects that we require those companies to partner with Gambians in order to be able to carry them out. So you can see that most of the projects that we were able to roll out in preparation of the summit, we require those international companies to partner with Gambian companies. The reason being that we want knowledge transfer. We want our companies to be able to have a track record that they can ride on, to be able to have contracts of this nature, either here in the future or elsewhere in the sub-region. And also to have some of the funds also retained in the country. That is one of the things that we did with almost most of the projects that we oversaw, including the road projects, the water and electricity project that we've issued to NAWEC, the airport lounge project, etc., etc. So away from the infrastructure projects, now to the summit planning itself. All the companies that we work with, all the companies that were responsible for the logistics, the tents that were mounted, it was a Gambian company. The company that we hired to ensure that the conference center is renovated and painted, a Gambian company. The company that was responsible for the industrial cleaning of the conference center was a Gambian company. The company that did the uniforms for the army and the security services, the asobis for the protocol officers, the drivers, etc. Even the company that we hired to be able to buy some security apparatuses for our security services in preparation for the summit, all of these companies, so virtually 90 to 95% of the companies that were involved in the summit planning, in the events planning of the summit, were all Gambian companies. And these are all companies that benefited in a very significant way. And even if you look at the way that we handle the issue of accommodation, the accommodation situation was handled in such a way that the players were diverse. Not only did we work with hotel owners, but we also work with apartment owners, and some residents and private residential villas in the country. So you can see that local companies benefited significantly in our preparations for the summit.
Thank you. Faramos, go ahead.
Mr. Fadera, you have your critics, and these are Gambians that are also very patriotic. They would like to see something and be proud of it.
Yeah.
They do believe for $350 million, whatever reason, they believe that our country was not ready for something like this. Whether you're looking at the infrastructure, up to the last minute, lines were being drawn on the highway. Up to the last minute, housing was a problem. Up to the last minute, transportation was a problem. Were you guys ready? Did you underestimate it? Are you telling us that the timeline, everything that you guys projected that it would happen in 2024, you guys were able to get it done? Were you guys really ready? Or did you just scramble in the last minute to make sure that you get it done? What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that all the projects that we earmarked for the summit were not completed 100% in time before the summit, but nonetheless, some were completed. But I think in spite of that, what is most important is we were able to deliver on all the logistical requirements that we set ourselves, all the logistical obligations that we had, even though the issue of the accommodation was being sorted all the way through to the end. At the end of the day, what matters is that all the guests were accommodated and were accommodated in befitting facilities. The issue of the highway, it is still being constructed. Never did we anticipate the Badil Hardin highway to be completed 100% before the summit. In fact, that is why originally we had the project divided into phases. So phase 1 was supposed to cover all the way to the Senegambia area, such that once the summit is upon us, wherever we stop with the construction, wherever the summit finds us, we will just stop there, do the summit, and afterwards we continue. But to our surprise, the contractors of the Badil Hardin Highway did a fantastic job. They were able to cover, more grounds than we had hoped. In fact, now, as I speak to you, they are now laying the asphalt all the way to the finishing point at Sincona. So I think the most important thing is we ended up prevailing. We ended up finding solutions. What ended up happening, we had a lot of delays, to be fair, but all those delays also were not our making directly. Correct. But the most important thing here is that, going by the adage, when life throws lemons at you, you make lemonade out of it. So we had this challenge. We had to be innovative. We had to rise to it, and that is what we did. Even though some of the solutions.
I think we just lost Nfally. Hopefully, he'll be coming back soon. Yeah, there he is.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I mistakenly ejected myself.
I'm thinking for the $350 million, your internet should be up and running, my brother.
No, it's not the internet. I think it's the way that I'm gesturing my hands. I mistakenly pressed the
okay.
Leave Studio, yes.
Okay.
Leave Studio button, yeah. So our internet is doing absolutely all right. It's fine.
I hear you.
You know, yes. So, but just to also on that point, just to clarify, the $350 million dollars that I referenced
Right.
is the money that we raise in
Correct.
relation to the infrastructure projects.
Correct.
It is not the money that we spend on the events planning.
Okay.
The events planning was not up to $350 million US dollars.
Okay.
It was just $500 million, and that went into all the logistics and all the administrative requirements that we needed to put in place, such as vehicles, the accommodation, the feeding, and all other things that we needed at the time.
Yeah, Mr. Fadera, Mr. Fadera. Nfally, there were a couple of things that were out there that maybe needs clarification.
Yes.
One has to do with these, the number of cars that were actually purchased. Most Gambians, they're like, even myself included, trying to put my arms around it. I understand that when some quarter says 100 cars, some said, I think the Minister of Information clarified and said it was 87 cars. And the money that people are throwing out there on social media, that the cars cost $12 million, which is almost $185,000. And I'm like, are you really? Seriously? Is there any way that you can set light on that particular issue? Because people are out there grappling, saying that this is the kind of wastage we are talking about. How, in God's name, can you buy a single vehicle, whatever the vehicle is, for $185,000? Even the supporters of the OIC are grappling with that. Can you help us with answers?
In relation to the vehicles you mentioned, I cannot specifically and authoritatively talk about that subject matter because the procurement of those vehicles took place under the auspices of the Ministry of Finance. So our office was not in any way involved in the purchase and the procurement of those vehicles. So I do not know how much the vehicles cost and how much money and how it was procured. But what I do know is that by virtue of the obligation on us as a host country, we were required to provide transportation facilities for the guests that we expect. And as part of that expectation also, we needed to provide vehicles that match in luxury to the status of the guests that we were expecting. So that is what compelled the government of the Gambia to go into, a variety of, to consider a variety of solutions to make sure we meet that requirement. So that is why, some vehicles were purchased, some were given to us by a friendly country, and then the rest also we rented them. So to come back to your question more directly, I do not have the competence to address the subject matter of the vehicles that were purchased and the cost involved because our office was not involved, and I am not privy to, the relevant information regarding how they were purchased.
Yeah, I want to just press a little bit. I understand you mentioned that, and then most reasonable people, if you're inviting guests to your house, you want to make sure that they have expectations, but they also understand the place that they were coming to, that Gambia is an extremely poor country. And whatever the expectations are, whatever kind of vehicles we're going to go out there and purchase, whether it's the Emir or somebody coming from Saudi Arabia, we will never be able to impress them. And could we have just said, look, we are a poor country. Ooh, what happened? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, I think I just went out there for a minute. That we are a poor country, and we're going to provide transportation to the best of our ability.
Yeah.
Could that have been a consideration? Yeah. And not necessarily to go out of limb to give them what we think their expectations are. Sorry, I just get distracted a little bit. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, I think, that's a fair point. And I'm sure you're also probably aware that there are more expensive vehicles than the vehicles that we are talking about out there. So in my view, this is as far as our own assessment, befitting vehicles good enough to be able to ferry and transport the guests that we had anticipated. You know, Gambia, even for us at the level of the Secretariat, we are aware of our own limitations. We know what we are capable of as a country, and we are also very much conscious of that. And, you know, we know all too well that we needed not to stress ourselves beyond our capacity and our capability. So I can assure you that to a very large extent, we had that consideration in mind, that there is nothing that we can do that will impress these people beyond what they are already used to. So we just have to act within our own means. But with acting within our own means also means making sure that our obligation as a host country, we live up to it. When Gambia decided to accept to host the OIC summit, we knew all too well that there were certain expectations that were expected of us, reasonable expectations. And that includes providing befitting transportation facilities for the people that we expect. So in my view, I'm not really sure about the amount of money that went into the vehicles that we are talking about, but I know that the vehicles were of good standard, and that, you know, they were good enough to be able to...
So would you say you don't know how much money that was spent, and that's fair enough, really.
Yes.
Sorry about that. But if, let's say, for instance, $12 million on average was spent on those cars, $185,000, you as Fadera, does that make sense to you? I mean, I'm just putting it out to you. Like, there are people that are out there and they're kind of trying to grapple with this issue. Now, you hearing it for the first time, seeing it on, do you think that makes sense to spend $180,000 on a vehicle?
Mr. Jeng, with all due respect, what I think in my personal capacity does not matter, to be honest.
But it does. You're a citizen.
I am here speaking for and on behalf of the Gambia OIC Secretariat. And if you ask me, I try to answer that. That what we needed, what we required as the organizers, was to make sure we had befitting transportation facilities for the guests that we had. And if you ask me, without speculating on the price and the money involved, if you ask me, the vehicles that we had indeed were of befitting status to ferry the people that we had, the guests that we had. And it did just that. You know, the guests were very much pleased with the level of logistics and the administrative arrangements we had put in place to facilitate their stay and the meetings here at the conference center.
Fair enough, Mr. Fadera. Thank you very much. So,
thank you, Mr. Fadera. Mr. Fadera, I still have to press on the on the 350 million, because I guess a lot of the viewers are still saying, okay, you know, if we're talking about, you know, carton to coiner, we talk about the infrastructure development, and you kind of highlighted, you know, the contracts that are being awarded to the local owned businesses. We appreciate that. And also differentiating, you know, what was raised for, you know, the build up, and also to sponsor the conference as well. But Mr. Fadera, you know, we always talk about what is in for me. And some people goes as far as making comparison between when Senegal hosted the OIC and Gambia, the benefit, you know, and yes, these are long-term projects, but folks say people in your own area, in Yomi, I mean, because during this time, we had a major challenges, people crossing the ferry and stuff like that. It would be nice. I mean, I think the priority area is, you know, the people who are able to come out there and sell their goods and showcase what the Gambia is all about, and also forge partnership, a long-term partnership in terms of economy, in terms of security and all that. These are negotiations that you can get a lot out of it. So my question to you is, what do you think was the pitfall? How come a lot this has not, because I saw some of your partners who were part of the OIC before say this is supposed to be a nationwide impact. Everybody should be talking about it one way or the other. But you feel like some people will say, hey, I didn't feel that I mean it was one-sided, and the people who need to feel, and I want you to set the record straight. This is not, I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but you're the expert. Can you lay us out how you can say, besides the infrastructure, what has it benefit folks from rural Gambia the combos and elsewhere?
No, but Mr. Marong, I think I attempted to answer that earlier on when I was looking more generally at the benefit of the summit coming to this country. Like I said, I think in terms of visibility, in terms of the impact of the summit, I think it is fair to say everybody in the country here definitely knew that something was happening, something unprecedented was happening. We endeavored to make sure everybody, regardless of where you are in the country and regardless of our linguistic identities, everybody participated in equal measure in the summit. We had a lot of public engagement activities geared towards that. We had a lot of quite a good number of our media public engagement activities were aimed at making sure the public is part of it, and they felt that this requires the participation of all of us, and to a very large extent we achieved that. But in terms of the impact, I think, like I said, the coming of the summit in and of itself is not the end. I know a lot went into the preparations, and in the run-up to the event, a lot of people had anticipated a lot of things. Even in Senegal, the impact of the OIC hosting in Senegal did not just stop with the summit. In fact, the summit was just the beginning. There is a reason why Senegal hired a floating boat as part of their summit logistics, because a lot of the hotels that they had planned for the summit were not completed. In fact, up to the time of the summit taking place in Senegal, most of the major roadworks were not completed. But people begin to appreciate and see the benefit of and the impact of the summit after the summit was concluded. And this is going to be the case for the Gambia. I mentioned it earlier on. The Badil Hardin Highway construction is ongoing. It is not completed 100%. Other road projects are also being implemented. And more broadly also, the Gambia-OIC relationship is also just beginning. The conclusion of the summit is just the beginning of what is possible between Gambia and the OIC. I believe that very strongly, and I can see how it will impact us as a country and the people that are in the country as well. I am aware that there are efforts to ensure that our chairmanship would have huge dividend for us, or huge impact or benefit for us as a country. The government is looking at making sure the private sector, the CSO, the public sector, everybody is engaged in making sure we leverage the opportunity that we have, the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we have to be at the helm of the OIC leadership. So to answer you more directly, people would begin to, even though some of the immediate benefit and the impact is being felt, but people will begin to appreciate the summit and our involvement with the OIC, the leadership, the chairmanship, and all those things. We will begin to appreciate it more as we move on in the next few months and years to come. Definitely, I'm very hopeful for the future. I'm very, very optimistic that Gambia will stand to benefit a lot, because I know that the OIC is a very proactive organization, and the OIC is also involved in quite a range of issues bordering on socioeconomic and human development all over the world. The OIC is in the area of research, science, and technology. They are in the area of innovation. They are in the area of trade cooperation. They are in the area of cultural promotion. They are into a lot of things that I can see Gambia benefiting from. And I think it is up to us as a country to make sure it is not a waste, it is not a missed opportunity. And for me, from where I am standing, from a personal point of view, I think, all of us should come together, be the diaspora, the civil society, the private sector, the government. We should all come together in the form of a national conference and have a conversation around how we can best leverage this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we have. That is to be the chair in the helm of the OIC leadership. So I think the possibilities are huge, and this is just the beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Fadera. Mr. Fadera, the other question I wanted to ask, and I respect your answer, saying you don't know, you can't talk much about the vehicles that were purchased. But I want to ask though, what is the criteria for hosting such an event? And you mentioned something about we have to meet the expectations of the delegates that are coming in here. But at the same time, there was discussions that, I believe Saudi government was supposed to give about 100 vehicles, and that didn't fall through. Now, as Musa said, Gambia is a very, very small country, and it's very, very poor. With that expectation and Gambia willing to host, I think when we think about this, who's supposed to actually sponsor these events? Does it come from the delegate or major donors, or how does all the logistics aspect come together?
In terms of the sponsorship of the summit, to answer your question simply, the sponsorship of the summit is expected to come from the host country. It's not correct, or I think a lot of people assume just because we hosted it on behalf of the OIC doled us money. There was no money from the OIC for us to contribute to the logistical and the other arrangements that we had in place. The member countries also were under no obligation to give us money. So what happens is that once the Gambia was confirmed to be the host, what the OIC as an organization did and could do was to pass a resolution unanimously at the Makkah Summit in 2019. I was there, where it encouraged member countries and OIC affiliated organizations to support Gambia in its bid to host a successful summit. So no country or no OIC affiliated organization or the OIC itself was under obligation to finance or sponsor any of our events planning. So the onus is on us as a host country to make sure we provide all those logistical and administrative requirements that we had. So that was why one of the mandates of our office was to go out there and raise resources. So we used the goodwill of the OIC, reach out to OIC member countries through bilateral means and OIC affiliated organizations, present our proposals to them, our vision, and hope that they would buy into it. So that is what happened in these cases. That is what happened with the resources that we were able to raise through bilateral means, but also through multilateral means, such as these international financial organizations that are affiliated with the OIC. So you mentioned that Saudi at some point promised to buy 100 vehicles for us. I'm not privy to that information, and I'm not saying it is wrong. But what I do also know is that a lot of countries also pledged to do a lot of things, but they did not materialize. So if you understand these things, and these pledges, most of these pledges came before COVID. And with the advent of COVID, a lot of things change in the world. And also there is donor fatigue. COVID was such that countries had to spend a lot of money to respond to it. After COVID-19, a whole lot of stuff's changed. Donor fatigue crept in. And now most of these Arab countries don't just dole out money like that. They have now, in the words of somebody else, they have now woken up. What they do, instead of giving grants and dole monies as charities, they give them as loans, bankable projects where they will have they will reap the dividend sometime in the future. So all of those things contributed. But more importantly, to answer your question more directly, Gambia, no other country was under any obligation or organization to support Gambia. It was up to us as a host country, because accepting to host the summit comes with those expectations that, you will make sure that the guests that are coming will be facilitated in terms of whatever logistical and administrative needs that they may have to be able to participate in a seamless manner in the sessions of the summit.
Thank you. Faramuz, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Fadera, again, we thank you immensely. We don't sound like
you're welcome. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
To only raise negativity, because there is no doubt that most of us as Gambians were digayala. we're all proud of. I mean, what happened.
No, no, no. These are vital questions. These are vital questions, and as officers, we are accountable to the people, and we encourage these kind of conversations definitely, because what we realize is that largely the misinformation that we have out there, in most cases, do not come from positions of ill will. It's just out of people not knowing what the true picture of the matter is. But nonetheless, you also have people that are out there bent on deliberately misleading people. So we always welcome the opportunity to interface with the public through the media, to have these kind of conversations.
So talking about that, the guy that had your job, this was Mr. Nyangai. I'm not sure whether you were privy to some of the issues that he raised. I'm just trying to scroll down here. He called it, but anyway, let me just go back to it. Mr. Nyangai, he had your job before, and this is what he said. He said the first critical deliverable before embarking on an infrastructure work was the enactment of a local content legislation. This law would have empowered indigenous contractors to partner with international firms. That was one of the key deliverables he said it was missing. The second deliverable, according to Njai, was to establish a sovereign wealth fund to manage the assets, meaning the hotel conference center, the lounge, and so forth. And he said the third deliverable was to partner with a big name hotel, the Radissons, the Marriott, the Hiltons. And this was the third deliverable, he said. The fourth deliverable, according to Jai, was the water treatment facility was also promised to serve hotels and residents from Sheraton to Cape Point, and a new borehole field in Sanyang. And then he went on. 110 vehicles were also solicited from the Saudis to assist in the movement of delegates, as it was the responsibility of the host nation to provide a minimum of 3 cars per delegation, which has something to do with the question that my colleague asked. And he then went on, Gambians in all sectors, he calls it the economic dividends, that the locals were supposed to benefit from it, but it looks like most of it went to foreigners, according to Njai. And then he talked about a web portal was to be built to offer a two-way service. Again, I'm not sure whether you're privy to, he talked about enactment of a local content legislation. He talked about establishment of a sovereign wealth fund. Partnering with big name hotels. He talked about water treatment facility. He talked about economic dividend and a web portal. If these were the big deliverables for the OIC, one looking at it would say, I don't know whether I would call this a success. What say you?
First of all, I want to disagree completely with his assessment that the benefit of this OIC project went to foreign companies. In fact, I said earlier on that 90 to 95% of the contracts that were awarded as part of the events planning in preparation for the summit went to Gambian companies. So I don't know how and which, of the I don't know what he meant when he said, if I get you right, that most of the benefit went to foreign companies. I would really welcome for him to clarify that and make that clear for the
just to be fair to him, this is what he said. Just to be fair,
yes,
he said Gambians on all sectors should have registered economic dividend in us hosting the summit, but sadly some of these dividends went to foreign nationals who in turn subcontract to local expertise to execute the assigned task. He said foreign nationals were given and then they subcontract Gambians instead of directly going to Gambians.
Again, I think that is not correct. But like I said, I would welcome further clarification of what he meant by that. And also, I would challenge him to also to mention specifically which foreign companies. In fact, he said some, which in my view is in reference to a significant number. And I am somebody who is intimately involved in the organizing and the planning of the summit. And I know the whole arrangement in relation to the contracting, in relation to the summit planning and the production itself. I can tell you here authoritatively that 90 to 95% of the contracts that were issued as part of our event planning went to Gambian companies. And in most cases, companies owned by young people. I mentioned some of the things that we dole out. These are all young companies that are owned by individuals. But more generally, I disagree with a lot of the things that he mentioned. And I also would like to say some of the things that he mentioned we have already accomplished. The issue of local content. We needed not to have a legislation in place for us to encourage international companies to work with our local companies. I mentioned that from the beginning that was exactly what we did. Most of the mega infrastructure projects that were awarded to international companies was given to companies that had Gambian companies act as their local partners. That was a requirement. We required these companies to work with local companies as part of that local content that he referenced there. That is one issue. The issue of a sovereign wealth fund, we can debate that because these projects that we are talking about here, they are all financed separately. They are all financed individually. Their payment terms, their financing terms are all unique. They are unique and basically not the same. So I am not really sure about that, how we can have a sovereign wealth fund. I think, it may be a good idea. But like I said, it's also something that may be up for consideration. But I know that most of these companies are funded separately. Their financing terms are also very much different. So I'm not really sure about having a sovereign wealth fund to be able to manage all of them under one umbrella. The issue of branded hotels, I guess that's what we had anticipated to do with the concession agreement that we signed with a private investor to construct and establish the Radisson Blu hotel that we all know about. So it just happened that the hotel could not materialize in time for the summit, but definitely we have moved in that direction. And to the best of my knowledge, that hotel project is still being implemented. There's a special purpose vehicle that has been set up purposely to oversee the construction of that hotel project. And to the best of my knowledge, construction work is still ongoing. So the issue of the water treatment plant, that is also something that we have accomplished. The $32 million that I talked about is part of it is for NAWEC water, another and the other part for the NAWEC electricity. So if my memory serves me right, $10 million is for the water component, and the 12 million is for the electricity component. And one of the scope of work for the water electricity component of the NAWEC project includes the construction of a new water treatment plant. It includes the replacement of NAWEC's distribution network, the pipe networks that distribute water across the Greater Banjul area and elsewhere. So that we have definitely accomplished. And then the issue of the what is the other thing? The web portal.
The web portal, yeah.
The web portal is exactly what we have done. We managed to build a website, a purpose-built website for the summit, and the website was serving two purposes: general information purposes, but also delegates management. All the delegates that came to the summit were required to register online, and all of them registered online, including the president. They all registered online. So we have that portal in place, and we have that data also with us. And we were able to manage the accreditation and the registration process all by ourselves here at the level of the Secretariat. So going by his own yardstick, definitely we have accomplished most of these things that we have set out for ourselves, and even more. We were able to do more than some of these things that were that he mentioned, that you referenced in your question. So that is why I said, when we look back on our performance, when we look back on what we have done in terms of the logistics, in terms of the administrative requirements, definitely we have done a great job, much to the satisfaction and delight of our organizers, but also the guests that we had anticipated.
So, Mr. Fadera,
yes.
suma mbokki fana ñu ne fu ne gannaaw lamb gi jeex na. Everything is over now. So what is the what do we do with the OIC and the Secretariat? How do you guys going to be able to pay salaries to the Faderas and the presidents and all the employees that you guys have? It's over now, or are you guys going to? What's going to happen to the Secretariat?
What's going to happen to the Secretariat? I am not sure, to be honest. But I know, the government would look into the fate of the organization. But what I do also know is that the opportunity to host the OIC for the next 3 years is a Herculean task.
Yes.
But it's also a good opportunity for our country, just like I mentioned earlier on. And that being the case, I think the hosting opportunity that we have, or the opportunity that we have to be at the helm of the OIC for the next 3 years, is something that requires delicate management. And it's something that requires dedicated attention from the government. If not, it might be another missed opportunity for the country. So in my view, the Secretariat is well positioned to be able to support the president as it carries out its mandate of chairing the organization. And the Secretariat is also well positioned to be able to lead the national endeavor in that direction, to make sure our national resources, to make sure our institutions, to make sure our organizations are, positioned in a manner that they can leverage on this opportunity that we have as a country. So I'm sure as we move to the next months and weeks to come, we will have clarity in terms of where the organization is going to head. But I know already the organization is doing a fantastic job, and that the government has a great deal of trust in the organization. We are, just like I said, we are managing the Sadara Karaba Jawara International Conference Center. And also shortly before the summit, the VVIP lounge management has been entrusted in our hands. So my view is that the Secretariat will be very crucial and instrumental in pushing the conference destination agenda of the country. We have the capacity, we have the competence, and we have the resources with us to be able to push that, to make sure that the Gambia becomes a leader in the sub-region, in the area of conferences and meetings. Sorry.
So how many people do you have hired at the Secretariat? And do you have any idea in months to come, where is your salary coming from? To pay your salaries and operating expenses? Or are you hoping that government would be giving you guys subvention to take care of these salaries and other operating expenses?
Yeah, our office is it's a very lean office in terms of structure and human resources. We are less than 20. In fact, if you remove the auxiliary staff, we are about 15 or 16 or so, but a very effective team nonetheless. If you can appreciate the magnitude of work that went into the planning, the organizing, and the production of the summit, it's quite huge. And to think that a team of that number was able to chaperone it and spearhead it, it's quite remarkable, definitely. But I do know that the team is also committed. We have been driven and motivated by the fact that we know at the end of the day what was at stake is the reputation of our country. It was a make or break moment for us. So that was our single biggest motivating factor, and that was enough to encourage us to be steadfast in pursuing our goals of making sure we deliver a successful summit. And that's exactly what we have done. So in terms of the operational costs, we are funded by the government of Saudi. They fund the affairs of the operations of the Secretariat. Hopefully, once we are able to repurpose the Secretariat and have, a very clear mandate for it going forward, we will be able to figure out how we are going to maintain the operations of the summit. Probably we'll have to go back to the Saudi again, or maybe the government will have to.
So this was never discussed at the beginning that post-state, this is what's going to actually happen to the Secretariat after the meeting itself? Are you guys going to start talking about it, or was it really in the cards as far as planning-wise? Was it ever discussed that post OIC, this is what's going to happen to the Secretariat?
Just like I said, our mandate from the beginning was very clear. And if you look at our mandate, largely, you can safely say that it logically largely concludes with the conclusion of the summit, because it was resource mobilization, infrastructure implementation, and events plan. And even in terms of the infrastructure implementation, all the infrastructure projects that we were able to midwife, if we manage to put them on very strong footings, what we do is we hand them over to relevant government agencies to manage for sustainability. Like the road projects, we raised the funds and then we facilitated the whole process. But at the end of the day, what we did was to hand over the road projects to NRA. Likewise, the water and electricity company, they are in the hands of NAWEC. Likewise, the VVIP Lounge project, GCAA, Civil Aviation Authority. So that is what we've been able, that is what our mandate has been up to this point. So just like I said, going forward, the conversations are ongoing. And then right now, from the look of things, much of the conversation is leaning towards supporting the president as it seeks to chair the OIC in the next 3 years. But more importantly also is to help Gambia, because like I said, the conference center is under our management and we have done a tremendous job, to be honest, in the past 3-4 years. In the past 3-4 years. And, you know, and hopefully we'll continue to, you know, manage it and continue to push for the Gambia to become a leader in terms of conferences, in terms of international gatherings and things of that sort. Because as you know, our tourism portfolio is not very diverse. It's just the sun, the sea, and the sun. So what we want to do is to diversify into other areas of tourism, and conferencing and exhibition and international meetings is very lucrative. You know, right now, like I said, most regional meetings are taking place here in the Gambia. The annual meetings of the African Union Human Rights Commission, you know, for the past 2-3 years, they've all been taking place here at the conference center. The last time we had the Africa Central Bank governors, all of them. We had the first ever Africa Ulama conference also in the Gambia. So increasingly, we have seen, you know, a rise in the number of international meetings that are taking place in the Gambia. And, you know, our office is at the forefront of that. Hopefully, when given the opportunity, we'll continue to fight and push and make sure, you know, the country continues to benefit from some of these sectors.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fadera.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mr. Fadera, thank you. I'd like to follow up on your earlier answers to my question, particularly when, you know, Gambia decided to host the OIC. And obviously, I mean, there was objectives laid out and some of the logistics that needs to be met and, you know, every other stuff to make this summit successful. So when it was decided that Gambia was gonna host the OIC, and obviously, from your explanation, obviously you guys knew there was resource constraint, and obviously there are challenges that obviously needs to be met. And I think my question is, what was the thinking when all these things you guys knew up front? And with all the challenges that our country has, what were the strategies or the plans in place to meet those challenges? You know, because it's the responsibility of the host country. I get that. But also, there's a lot of wealthy countries within OIC itself, right? So what was the thinking in terms of resource mobilization in order to meet, you know, the expectation of these delegates when the summit is held?
Can you kindly repeat the last part of your question, please? I kind of missed it.
Oh, okay. No, I said, what was the plan or strategy, the planning,
Yes.
when you guys knew all, the logistics planning, all the things put together to make the summit successful. What was the thinking and the strategy in place to ensure that you guys execute a successful, summit?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Marong. In fact, I know I mentioned that we ended up being able to raise about 350 million, but the original goal of the resource mobilization drive was $1 billion. That was the goal that was set out for ourselves, for the organization when it set out. But as you know, it is not easy to, access funds nowadays with donor fatigue all over the world, with crisis all around the world. So it is not easy like that. But we were able to settle with what we have, and then we ended up also becoming a little bit more realistic, knowing that of all the things that we would like to do, there are certain projects that are must-have projects that we must ensure that are in place to be able to facilitate a successful summit. And the whole idea of raising resources, the whole idea of going out there looking for resources and investing it into our infrastructure was to bridge the infrastructure deficit that we have. Because you cannot invite people to come to your country for a conference of this magnitude, for a summit of this magnitude, world leaders from 27 countries all over the world, and not have, for example, a conference facility. You cannot invite these people to come and not have good roads. You cannot invite these people to come and you're still grappling with erratic supply of electricity, water, and energy. You cannot invite these people to come when you do not have the right infrastructure at the airport, which is supposed to be the first point of call for any visitor in any country. So these were the issues that inform our decision to, to concretize all the wishes we had from the beginning to fundamentally 5 or 6 principal projects, strategic projects that we know would ensure that we are able to host a very successful summit. So this is what informed these key strategic projects, and this is what also informed our resource mobilization. That is why when we went out there, we did our best to ensure that we convinced the donors, and thankfully most of them were they bought into our vision and they committed money to the projects that we have earmarked for the summit. And I must at this juncture also commend the government of the Gambia for also participating as one of the financiers to some of these projects, at least one of them, which is the Battle Hardened Highway project. In fact, the Gambia government is one of the biggest contributors to the financing of the Battle Hardened Highway project. Most people don't know that. But at the same time, just like I said, we knew that, these projects that we have set out for ourselves were essential in ensuring that we have a successful summit. That is why, we pursued those projects. I don't know if I have answered your question, Mr. Marong, whether you...
No, thank you. I'm going to tag along. So, in your early statement to Musa's question, in regards to the script that he read from Nyanjai, and you said you were very involved in the planning, preparation from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question to you is, knowing the logistics constraint in terms of, especially for the vehicle. So for the pod, during your planning, how many vehicles did you guys anticipate would be needed for this, effective execution of transportation of the delegates from point A to point B?
Our original plan, well, not original anymore, but Mr. Njai that you mentioned said the original plan was 100 vehicles, but I can tell you that we use more than 100 vehicles for the summit. The entire vehicle fleet was 350 vehicles that went into the organizing and the production of the summit itself. So 350 vehicles, 100 vehicles from Mauritania. The Mauritanian government was, gracious enough to loan us those vehicles for free. And that as a secretariat, we rented another 100 vehicles. And then we had expected about 100 vehicles to be purchased from the government of the Gambia. And then the other 50, from the best of my knowledge, it was commandeered from the pre-existing government fleet that we have in the country. So all in all, 350 vehicles were used as part of our operations, as part of the summit, transportation operations for the summit.
Okay, so my follow-up, sorry, my follow-up question is, since you were involved in the planning and execution, and you were able to highlight the numbers needed, my question to you is, and I know you say you don't want to answer this, but why were the vehicles purchased, and is it true? And I'm going to press this because I think, what was the thinking? I mean, if you supplement from the existing government fleet, you had 100 from Mauritania, and I don't know where else you said, but was it more effective, cost effective wise, was there any thinking of renting vehicles from the local dealership? Because on that Baton Highway, Baton Highway, there was a couple of dealerships out there. Was there any thinking in terms of suppressing the cost? Forging some type of partnership to rent from the local dealers instead of purchasing 87 vehicles?
Like I said, 350 vehicles were required for the entire operations, the transportation operations. So out of that 350 vehicles, originally, in fact, I think by our own estimates, it was supposed to be about 400 vehicles, and of different categories and standards, based on the status of the people that we were expecting. But like I said, the government thought it wise to buy at least 100 of that. Then the rest we got loaned, and the other one we rented. So the renting of the last start of the vehicles that we needed was a public tender. It was tendered in the newspaper. Gambian companies were encouraged to apply, and one of the companies that sorry.
No, go ahead, Nfally. Go ahead.
So to answer your question more directly, what I was saying is we had the tender published publicly, and companies were encouraged to apply and help provide the vehicle need that we have at the time. And companies that responded were the companies that we ended up working with. But more directly also, the companies, the car dealerships that we have in the country, most of them do not have the required standard of cars that we were looking for. As you know, in diplomacy and in events like this, what you give country A is what you have to give country B in terms of uniformity. You have to make sure, if you give all the foreign ministers, for example, a Mercedes S-Class, you have to make sure that all the foreign ministers have that. Or even if they are going to have a different car brand, but the luxury has to be equal in terms of the standard. So I don't think in country our car dealerships have that capacity to be able to provide that sort of requirement. But more importantly, and more directly to your point, our request for cars was a public tender. We published it on the newspaper. We invited Gambian companies to participate, and the companies that participated in the process were the ones that we vetted and considered. And the company that ended up winning it was adjudged to be the most responsive, and we gave them the contract. That was how it was done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fadera. Musa, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so Mr. Fadera, I'm sure we are down to the I'll ask my last question, and Sariang, if you have any other question, then we would let Mr. Fadera go, because definitely, like he said, for the past month or so, he must have been extremely busy and stressful. The man needs his rest. Mr. Fadera, couple of things though. We saw that there were some drivers that were not very happy. They're like, one day, you know, and then maybe you can set light and clarify as far as the drivers are concerned. The other thing too, Mr. Fadera, you know our country. Whenever something like this happens, this big elephant in the room is always corruption is always in the minds of the people.
Yeah,
they believe when you have events like this, you can eliminate that corruption. What do you say to, first of all, the drivers that are complaining about, their salaries? And like I said, I don't have any tangible reason to say that this thing is full of corruption, but just to address the issue, because I know it's in the minds of all of us. What do you say to that, Mr. Fadera?
Well, the issue of the drivers, I'll begin by saying the drivers have been paid. They've been paid, each one of them, $8,000. All the 350 drivers that were involved in the summit operations were all paid fully. I guess what led to the confusion, in my view, is that the drivers were a little bit impatient, because the engagement letter that we signed with them said 10 days. It was supposed to be a 10-day engagement. We did not even exhaust the 10 days, and they came asking for their money, number one. Number two, it was less than 48 hours after the conclusion of the summit that they came asking for their money. Whether or not they were going to be paid was never under contention. We were very clear, even the engagement letter stipulated it quite clearly, that they will be compensated. It could not, sorry, we could not have engaged them in a fresh employment, because all the drivers involved were already under the employment of the government of the Gambia. These are all government drivers that were recruited from the system. So what we could do and have done was to compensate them in the form of an honorarium. That's what we indicated in the letter, engagement letter that we signed with them from the onset. So it was supposed to be a 10-day, but before the 10 days concluded, they came asking for their money. They were a little bit impatient, but nonetheless, we have paid them, all of them in full, 8,000, all the 350 drivers that are involved. On the issue of corruption, I think, I don't want to speculate. There is, what I do know is that the people that are involved, sorry, the people that are involved are people of, sorry.
Sorry about that.
So it's just speculation. It's just people going about talking about things that they have no clue of. But nonetheless, like I said, we are very much aware that what we were dealing with were public funds, and public funds, as you know, must be accounted for, and we handle them in the best possible manner with great deal of responsibility, and we made sure that the funds that were provided to us went into what they were supposed to be expended on. So we had our process in place. Everything that we do had to go through due process. So just like my CEO said the other day at the press conference, our office, we have nothing to hide. We are, very much ready to be audited even tomorrow morning. And I like to see that sentiment. I know the team that we have here at the Secretariat, very diligent, hardworking team. And, definitely, just like CEO said, we are ready to be audited even tomorrow, as soon as possible. If in all these years, even though our monies come from Saudi, in terms of operations, we are duly and annually audited by the Gambia National Audit Office, so we don't have any issues with that. But the only thing that I find to be quite unfortunate is just people sitting down and leveling these allegations just for the sake of it, without any proof, evidence whatsoever. Just because you can do it, just because you can say it, you just sit down and level these allegations. But at the same time, there's not much we can do about that. People would always be free to speculate and say whatever that they want to say. But we at the Secretariat know that, you know, the team that we have is quite a dedicated team, very responsible team. And we know that the monies on our hands are public funds that needed to be managed with due care and responsibility. And that is what we have done. Exactly, that's what we have done.
So when you say that, I think you said you're the director, the managing director, basically saying that you guys are ready to be audited even tomorrow. So yes, I have to assume then, I mean, the financial statements are ready. And if they're ready, when would you have it either on your website or be out there so that Gambians, for public information, would know that this is the amount of money that was either raised or mobilized and different expenditures? If you're ready to be audited, then clearly the financial statements are ready. So when would we have access to those financial statements?
Oh, of course, you know, I think CEO saying we are ready to be audited even tomorrow was just an expression of intent, not necessarily to say literally our accounts are ready to be audited. In fact, we are still paying some of the service providers. We have not paid all of them in full, obviously. But I guess what he was trying to demonstrate, which I am also trying to amplify here, is that as far as our Secretariat is concerned, we have nothing to hide. We are very transparent in the manner that we work. And as soon as whatever we are doing reaches its logical conclusion, we will avail ourselves to all forms of scrutiny and accountability out there, whether from the Gambia National Audit Office or any other entity that is interested in looking at our transactions and our books. Very much so. We will be more than willing to make that available. Definitely. We have no qualms doing that. You know, just like I said, we are regularly audited, even though our operational funding is not coming from the government of the Gambia, but we subject ourselves to the annual audits of the National Audit Office all the time. So we have no problems making, you know, our financial statements and our finances public and presenting it to whosoever may require it.
Again, I thank you immensely. I mean, Mr. Fadera, we've had a history with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're definitely going to be reaching out to you to help us like you always do. Again, you know, and like I said, you have been a conduit, a bridge between the Gambia, the government, I mean, public holders and Gambians in the diaspora. And I definitely appreciate your willingness all the time when we reach out to you. Mr. Sariang, I will give you the last word. Sailor.
I got the last word today, huh?
Always you have the last word.
Mr. Fadera, thank you very much. You know, I mean, you know, as you know, we will ask the questions. I mean, that's what we are. And, you know, we create that, you know, conversation. At least, you know, for the people, by the people, you know, we spoke to the diaspora directly, and some Gambians follow it. But I think my question to you is, based on your honest assessment, what are some of the areas, missed opportunities, and areas that we could have improved?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Marong. You know, just once again to say, definitely, I am very much pleased to be on the show. And anytime that you guys call on us, we will always endeavor to make ourselves available. We are public officials. We are aware of our duties, our responsibility to the public. And part of that includes to be held to account, you know, for our actions and our conduct in office. And this is very much welcome. And I also must express my satisfaction and admiration of how the conversation is conducted. You know, it is conducted in a very civil, but, you know, honest and candid manner, which is very much, I think, everybody else in this country should take cue from you guys. You know, we can ask hard questions, but do it in a manner that is very respectful and you know, and civil as well. So I'm happy to be here, and anytime you call on me, I will very much oblige. Definitely. Back to your question now, which is in relation to what you know, in hindsight, what we could do better. I think, you know, there is so much that we can do, that we would do differently if the opportunity present itself. I think, one of the things that in hindsight I think we should work on is to make sure we do the planning with enough time in mind. Definitely, I think one of the concerns that we had at the Secretariat was that the funding for the events planning part of the things, I feel like could have come a little earlier than it did. That kind of disrupted our plans in terms of the things that we wanted to do, in terms of the things that we required in order to make sure we put in place all the facilities that we needed. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that time, the planning should have started a little bit earlier, in my view. But that is also by no fault of our own. We were supposed to do the summit sometime in December, and it got postponed. And December is end of the fiscal year. Before the budget was presented, approved, before the parliament, funds disbursed, it kind of ate into the time, and that also affected our planning significantly, to be honest. So I think in hindsight, planning ahead of time definitely is something that we would have done differently, in my view. But other than that, definitely, I think we tried our best and delivered under the circumstance. It was not easy, I have to be honest, but we did what we could, and thankfully, we ended up making everybody proud. We made Gambians proud. We made the organizers proud. We also made the guests that came very much proud of what we were able to deliver. And, don't take my word for it. Just a few days ago, we received a letter from the Iranian government expressing their satisfaction and admiration for what we were able to do as a country. The ECOWAS